Okay, so before Justin comes on, I just want to briefly introduce Justin, just give him a little bit of give a little bit of background about him because we are recording this and so we're going to have other people that are probably going to watch it. So Justin is an entertainment entrepreneur. He moved to Los Angeles 15 years ago to pursue a career in acting, but he has a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Lamona College and he has a master's degree in business administration with the emphasis in entrepreneurship. So he and I have been working together on various projects, and since he is decided to be a part of our board of directors, wanted him to start this Lunch and Learn series off for us so that we can learn more about entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much, Paula. I appreciate you as well, Eric. So I am going to share my screen so that we can all get the presentation. So this is entrepreneurship. What's not talked about on social media. So we all understand that social media is an incredible tool for entrepreneurship. We've seen social media really make millionaires and billionaires. And so, but there is an underlining notion that social media is this powerful thing when it comes to entrepreneurship, but there is a lot that's not talked about on social media as it relates to entrepreneurship. And that particular lack of information really does hinder entrepreneurs, creative thinkers. And so what we're going to do today is go through the process of entrepreneurship, some of the things that's not talked about on social media. But before we get into that, I just want to do a quick just entrepreneurial background. So Paula gave you all a highlight. So I just want to just nail it home a little bit more as it relates to my background in entrepreneurship. So I have started 4 businesses in my adult life. My MBA is in entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur for 12 plus years, starting here in Los Angeles, where I'm based. I've been an entrepreneurship professor for the last 9 years. And so I've seen how entrepreneurship has shifted in the last 9 years, especially as it relates to younger entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs on social media, as well as traditional entrepreneurs. And then also just teaching students from just a wide degree of backgrounds, as well as intergenerational. So from Gen Zs all the way down to baby boomers. So just having that particular background. And so currently I now consult in the private sector only through my company, Black Theorem. And so now for those on the call, just a couple of ground rules that we want, because there will be a portion where you can ask questions. So I want you to definitely monitor your airtime. So be mindful of how much you speak when we do get to the Q&A portion of the class. Mute your mics when you're not speaking. Be mindful of the background noise to make sure that it's not distracting. And then when we do once again get to that part where people are speaking, we ask that we do not interrupt anyone or speak over anyone. Just want to be respectful. Lead in with curiosity. So this is about entrepreneurship. So your questions or comments, we want them. So ask them, whether you use the raised hand feature and you come off mute, or even if you put the question or comment in the chat. So we'll welcome any of those areas. And then just be fully present as well. So entrepreneurship is something that a lot of people are interested in, but we do understand that there are a lot of distractions since a lot of people are working from home, but just want to take that into consideration. And then everyone is on a different level in their journey to entrepreneurship, whether they've been an entrepreneur for 20 years or 2 months, or even those that are just here to be curious about the craft. We do ask that you respect other people's opinions as it relates to them wanting to learn more about entrepreneurship. So now we're going to get into it a little more. So by the end of this workshop, so there's common language that's used in business that you can really tell if a person knows entrepreneurship or not, or just know the realm of business, because it does have its own language. And so you also understand how to pivot in the nature of entrepreneurship, because we've just been in a global pandemic for the last 2.5 years. And so a lot of businesses have had to pivot. Some have done it really well and others not so well. So we're going to look at how one pivots as well in the realm of entrepreneurship. And then we're going to explore multiple lenses in which to view business. There is no one size fits all. So what works for entertainment entrepreneurship is going to be different from media entrepreneurship versus traditional entrepreneurship. So understand the lens in which you view business. And so that's going to help you thrive even more. And then we're going to identify some best practices as well as resources that help you on the journey to being an entrepreneur, a business owner, or part-time entrepreneur, you know, any of the different facets of entrepreneurship, because there are many. So we want to make sure that you actually leave with resources, tips, and tools that work for you. And so our agenda, we're going to define what entrepreneurship is today, not what it was 20 years ago or 50 years ago. We're going to look at what entrepreneurship is right now. And then we're going to review the tenets of entrepreneurship, which are very similar to the structure of a business plan. But then we're going to translate those tenets into everyday language so that you can so anyone can understand it, no matter their educational level or their background, cultural background, or experience. And then we're going to look at entrepreneurship through the lens of multiple different entrepreneurs or types of entrepreneurs. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. So what is entrepreneurship? So we know entrepreneurship is in a lot of different bios in social media. You know, if you go on social media, you see people have hashtag entrepreneur, but what is it? And so it's always important that you do understand the history of entrepreneurship. Where did it derive from? So as you see on the screen, an entrepreneur is a person devoted to creating something of value, not for themselves mainly, but for people, society, and the overall economy. So thinking about the businesses, the products and services that you're creating, how are those products and services going to help people outside of yourself? So always think about that and allowing that to be the guiding post as it relates to you becoming an entrepreneur. And then entrepreneurship is the creation of a business or brand taking on all the risks. So it's all you. So you take on the risk of starting a business, you put your money up, you dedicate your time, you leverage your resources and to really make a profit, because business is about making a profit. So keeping that in mind, because you actually need profit in order to continue and grow as a business. So I want to keep that in mind. Now, you're probably like, Justin, this sounds like a lot of work, and you would be correct. Entrepreneurship isn't something to just post on social media. Hey, support my business. It really is a 24/7 type of work. You're always on call because you're the boss. You're the person in charge. So if it sounds like work, it really is work. And so you're going to find that out as it relates to the tenets of entrepreneurship. So here are the 7 traditional tenets of entrepreneurship and creating a business. So we need your executive summary, your business plan, your market analysis, your competitive analysis, your products and service description as well, the operating plan, and then of course, one thing that most people think about, finances. How much do you actually need to start your business? What does all of this mean? Now, if you're like, Justin, wait, slow down. What is a market analysis? What's this competitive analysis that you're talking about? I have not seen this on Twitter. Perfect. I'm glad you are inquiring, because I have translated these tenets into non-traditional modern language. So what is your elevator pitch? Can you describe your entire business in 30 to 60 seconds? And then ask yourself, what does your business actually do? And then who's your target audience? Like, who's actually buying your product or your service? And then how do you get those people's attention? How do you say, hey, I have this incredible product, buy it. And then who's actually doing what you do? Like, who's your competitors? Who are the people in the exact same space who have the exact same customers? You definitely want to know who they are and what they're doing. And then to do that, like, who's on your team? Is it just you? And it's perfectly fine if it is. Like there's no harm in being a solopreneur or solo entrepreneur. So keep that in mind. Who's on your team and what do they actually do? And then the products and services that you are trying to sell to your target audience, well, what value do they bring? How is what you're creating helping someone else? Remember the definition of an entrepreneur, creating something that benefits people and society and the economy. So what value is your product or service bringing? And then what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Like what's a day in the life of you, the entrepreneur? And then how much capital do you need to start your business, to continue your business, and to thrive? And then think about it. So how much do you need right now? How much will you need in a year? How much will you need in 5 years? So we want to make sure that we make those projections, that we really do think about the future. So as an entrepreneur, it's perhaps popular to think about the now, what's happening now. But we also have to think about what's happening tomorrow and what's going to happen next year. Of course, we don't have a crystal ball where we can figure out what's happening in the future, but preparation is key, as well as knowing how to pivot. So now I'm going to break these down into more detail, each one, so that you really get the crux of each idea and each tenant. So first, let's look at the elevator pitch / the executive summary. So it summarizes your entire business. Once again, 30 seconds to 60 seconds. And probably like, Justin, well, why so short? Because people have short attention spans, which means that you need to get their attention that quick. And guess what? If you can't describe the business that you created in 60 seconds, then that's going to make someone pause and think, well, wow, do you know what you're doing? Like, I thought this was your business. How can you not describe what you've created in 60 seconds? That's something that a lot of people are going to think about if you can't really describe or answer questions about your own business. So think about that executive summary. So once again, 30 to 60 seconds. So your mission, your products, your services, the value that it's going to create. So think about that. Then we have, let's see, the business description. So what does your business or brand do? So think about it. I want you to take a second and think about, what does my business actually do? Like what are the goals of this particular business? What are the products and services? What's the target customer base looking like? Are they young? Are they older? Are they middle class? And then details regarding the actual industry that you're in. And of course, this is a description. So you're going to go into more detail later on. And also your team's experience. So once again, we just talked about earlier, who's on your team? Well, what does your team bring to the actual industry that you're in? So that's really important, to be able to describe your business in a way that's attractive. So keep that in mind also. Then your market analysis. I know that this perhaps sounds a lot like school, and you would be right. It is important that you know how to research as an entrepreneur. And honestly, not just a Google search. I get that that's super easy, and I want you to Google everything. But at the same time, I want you to go a step beyond to really research. So it says identify the brand of your target audience and where to find this audience. So think about the entire market in which you're entering. So where are they located? Where are your customers located? What issues are they experiencing? And are the issues that they're experiencing, will your product or service actually serve them? Because we don't want you to create this incredible business and then we find out that it no longer serves your customer base. So we always want to keep that in mind as well. So think about the demographic. And we really do have to be honest. Are we creating a product and service just for the Black American community or the Latinx community or the majority population? So we want to keep that in mind as well, knowing how to strategize in a way that gets your audience's attention, because 16-year-olds are going to shop in a completely different place than 50-year-olds. So it's important that you really do understand that. Is your target audience on social media? If so, where? Are they on Twitter or Facebook or TikTok or Instagram? This is the research that you need to be doing. Or do they actually buy printed magazines or newspapers? Or do they watch television and now you have to think of a way to get a commercial on the air? So this is, once again, research and strategy that's important, that is going to dictate and determine how successful your business or brand is. So I always want you to keep in mind, know about your target audience, know what they're doing, know what they're thinking, know how much money they spend, and know where they spend their money. And that's going to really help you create a product or service that really do serve the masses. And now it's time to look at the marketing and sales plan. So you've done all the research, you understand all about your target audience. You know them well. You follow them on social media, you see what they're tweeting, you see what they're posting on Instagram or Facebook. You may even know some of them personally, and that's great. Now, how do you actually plan on selling your product or service to them? Now, that's important, because especially if you think about what's happening in the economy, people may not have a surplus of income or discretionary income, which means you really do have to be able to provide value to them in order for them to spend their hard-earned money on your product or service. So what are you going to do? What's your pricing plan? Can your audience actually afford your product or your service? And then, thinking about the strategy of informing your customers that you actually exist. So where are you putting ads on social media? Are you doing word of mouth? Is your product a Christian product to the point where you're now going to market to churches instead of individual consumers? So know all of these things before you go into business. It's very important that you don't start a business and then go backwards. We really do want you to do your research now, so that when you actually launch your product or your service, it's going to sell in a rate that's going to really make up for the investment that you put in at the initial start. So that's really important as well. So know how you're going to market and sell your product or your service to your customer base. And now the competitive analysis. Before I get into this, I do want to let you know, I often ask entrepreneurs, so who's your competition? And one big mistake that I often hear, well, we don't have any competition. And then I just shake my head like this, because you do have competition. They may not do the exact same thing that you do, but there is someone who's created a product or service or business that's going after the same demographic. And once again, a lot of people don't have extra income to just be spending. So that means a lot of entrepreneurs are vying for those dollars from different consumers. So think about it. Who's your top competition? Who's selling closely to the same product or service that you're selling? Also, what are the weaknesses and strengths? And how do you anticipate your company or brand comparing to them? So know what the strengths and weaknesses are of your competition, which means that's more research that you have to do. I'm pretty sure McDonald's knows what Burger King and Wendy's and Chick-fil-A does that's better than them, and what they do that's not better than them. So keep that in mind as well. These companies do research and analysis on their competition. So know those advantages and disadvantages of those different businesses that are vying for the same clientele that you're vying for. And then ask yourself, well, what makes you different? What makes you different from your competition? Do you have a better price point? Are you going after a more niche market than your competition? Do you have better branding? Do you have more followers on social media? Think about that. What makes you different? What are they doing? And what are you doing? And then we want you to make sure that you compare the two. That competitive analysis is going to ensure that the competition isn't beating you at every turn or every quarter. So that's really important. And now, the management and organizational description. Who's on your team? What do they do? So think about that. If it's just you, what are your qualifications? What is going to make someone look at your resume or look at your experience and say, I want to buy a product or service from them? And then if you have a team, what's attractive about your team? Like, what's the qualifications of your team? Do they have a track record of success, of honesty, of a quality product or service? That's going to sell your business, your product, or your service even more than a lot of other things. Because if you have that trustworthiness amongst your team and society or the industry understands, like, I know that whenever they put their name on something, it is a good product or service. So then people are going to trust your brand just because of the people on your team. So tell us, who's on your team? What do they do? How are they seen? As well as company structure. Now, LLC, S Corp, sole proprietor. So these are different legal forms of business. Now, I do believe, like, if you know anything about entrepreneurship, you know that company legal structure is a presentation all in itself, because it's a lot to grasp if you aren't as familiar. So I do want you to look into the benefits of legal structure, whether it's a limited liability company, whether it's an S corporation or a sole proprietor, which means that you are running the business yourself. Like, you are the sole person who's running the business, who's in charge of everything. So keep that in mind as well. Management and organizational structure and description. Now let's take a look at products and services. What are you actually serving or selling? And what are the benefits? So you have this great idea for a product or service. I think it's absolutely amazing. Everyone is telling you, you should really sell this. You should really create this. You should really make this a business, because we do know a lot of people encourage a great idea to come into fruition. And so this is where we want you to go into detail. So how will you actually make this product? How long will it last? How much will it cost for you to create? How much will you actually sell it for? Are you making a profit? If it's a service, how much is the service costing you to promote it? It's important that you understand price point, you understand value, you understand benefits. Because some people will say, well, if I buy this, what will it do for me? You need to be able to answer that question. If it's a product, well, how long will it last? Is there a warranty? What if I break it? Will you replace it? So you want to be sure that you know the answers to all of these questions before a customer or client asks that particular question. So know your product and your service very well. I mean, you created them, and they're expecting you to know the answers to their questions, because they're thinking, hey, well, you created this product, you should know all about it. And honestly, that's a fair question or a fair belief. Now, of course, you can. Now, if it's something that you did not think about, they really have come from outer space with a question that you didn't even think about, your advisors didn't think about, your board didn't think about, your mentors didn't think about, then feel free to say, great question. I don't have the answer to that right now, but I will get back to you. Be honest, and then actually get back to them. Follow up, because that's a sale that you could potentially make. So keep that in mind. Humility and honesty in business is key. And now is the operations plan. So, what do you do on a day-to-day basis to be successful in your business? So, like, what happens when you wake up? Do you make a product? Do you test your service? Do you respond to emails? Are you sending out products? Are you creating products? How many employees do you have that's working? Where will your company operate? Is it a virtual business where it's all online? Are you doing consulting online? Or are you doing consulting in person? Are you selling a product at farmers markets, or are you selling them on your website? Like, these are questions that you have to ask yourself and be ready to answer when someone else asks you these questions. So how will you operate? And this is also an important question for those who want funding as well, because a bank or angel investor is going to ask, well, how does this, like, what do you do? How does this work? How would you actually run the business? Because if I'm going to financially invest in you and your business, I need to know that you're operating at a level that's satisfactory and that's going to actually help me to get my investment back and then some. So be ready to talk about the operating plan for your business, because that's really important. That's really important, especially if you want to get funding. And now, financial projections and needs. So I will say the financial projections and needs is the component that really freaks a lot of people out. Not many people have really great relationships with money, and that's understood. It's not fine. You know, we all know that financial literacy isn't taught in most public schools in the US. We understand that. And a lot of information and or a lot of experience that we have, has come by trial and error. However, that should not keep you from understanding your financial projections and needs for your business. So if I'm a billionaire and I have a checkbook and I'm saying, hey, how much money do you need to start your business today? And I have my pen and I'm ready to write the check, what is the amount that you're going to tell me? Now, you can't say, I need $10 million. First of all, that's a lot. But you also, once you give me that number, you then have to tell me how you're going to actually spend it. So keep that in mind as well. How much money do you need to run your business? And then how much do you actually plan to make? So detail how you anticipate bringing in revenue. How many units are you planning on selling in a day, in a week, in a month, in 3 months? Analyze how much you make. So when you sell, if your goal is to sell 10 a week, how much money are you making? So multiply that times 4, then you have how much you want to make in a month. Then multiply that times 12, and then you know how much you want to make in a year. Now, that's a simple formula, and we know things change as it relates to pricing, demand of the product or service. So keeping that in mind as well. And then we want you to actually project how much you want to make in a year or 2 years or 3 years. So of course, increasing it at a rate that makes sense. And then ask yourself, well, Justin, well, I don't know. Well, how much do you want to make? Think about that question. Set a goal. How much do you actually want to make so that you not only that your business can be successful, but so also you can actually have a comfortable lifestyle. We understand that it's about, as we stated, entrepreneurship is about creating something of value for people, society, and the economy. Well, you're people, you're a part of society, you're within the economy. So of course, think about that as well. Don't leave yourself out. We want you to actually be able to make a salary from your business, because how else are you going to be successful in business if you're not successful personally? And then how will you actually get there? What do you plan on doing? How do you plan on making this money? So if you say I want to make $100,000, well, great. I think that's a very reasonable amount of money to make. Well, how are you going to do it? Are you going to be selling on Amazon? Are you going to be selling on your website? Are you going to put ads up on social media? Or is it strictly word of mouth? It's important that you're able to ask yourself these questions because I'm an investor. I'm ready to write a check right now. But before I write that check, I need you to tell me how you're going to make the money back. And that's important for investors. And it's also important for entrepreneurs because what if you are the investor of your business? Of course, you want to make your own money back plus some. So don't just think it's just for those who are externally investing, but think about yourself as well because it is your business or it's your brand and your name is tied to the business. So that's important. And now I want us to look at a couple of tips that I've created as it relates to um, being a successful entrepreneur. Now, you may be doing some of this already. If not, no worries. Take what works for you because in entrepreneurship, there's no one size fits all. My formula is going to be completely different from Paula's formula. Paula's formula of entrepreneurship is going to be different from Eric's formula of entrepreneurship. So it's really important that we figure out what works best for us. So developing a business plan, initially developing a business plan was for banks because they wouldn't initially give you a loan to start your business unless you've done all the research. Now, more so, a business plan is for you. It's for you to answer questions that are undoubtedly are going to come up in your entrepreneurship journey. And being frugal, it's important that you understand how to spend and save money. And remember, to make a profit, you have to have more money coming in than going out. And this is something that I want to really drive home is continue to educate yourself. I have a degree in entrepreneurship. However, I'm still taking classes on entrepreneurship. There is always something that we can learn. I'm always reading books. I'm always going to conferences virtually because we're still in a global pandemic. So that's important. And then build a team, whether it's you and a virtual assistant. Find someone who could help bring your vision to life. And then it says, find a mind, body, soul balance. Entrepreneurs are often burnt out because they're doing everything. Learn not to micromanage. Learn to bring people on your team and trust them with what you've hired them to do. And from there, take advantage of free marketing tools. If you're on social media, you know there are a lot of people giving advice. There are a lot of free tools as it relates to software as well. Different classes on entrepreneurship that you can take that are free. So definitely do your research to figure out what tools are out there, what free or cost-effective tools are out there that you can use that's going to help you in your business. Also, mentorship is important. Now, when I think about mentorship, think about it not just someone who's successful. It's important that they're successful, but I also think character is more important. I would rather have someone who's a millionaire with really great character. That's my mentor than someone that's a billionaire whose character is questionable. And then don't be afraid of networking, especially now that, the virtual world is here to stay. Of course, I think a hybrid world is coming, but there are ways for you to connect with a lot of different people all over the world because we are now in a global society more so now than ever before. So network on LinkedIn, join your local groups as it relates to networking and businesses and entrepreneurship. They're literally in every city, almost every city in the country. So just do research to figure out what's happening in your city, whether it's going to meetings at the chambers of commerce, you have options. So do your research to find different networking opportunities. And then be financially prepared. So make sure that you are personally in a position where you can start a business. So we know that there people can succeed, by a fluke or by going viral because we live in that type of social media world. However, for the majority of us, it's important that we be financially sound and prepared before we launch a business. And then this is something that's not talked about often, and that's investing in insurance. There are so many different insurances that are available for entrepreneurs as it relates to your product, your service. Even even if you are working from home, there's insurance for entrepreneurs who work from home. So I would definitely recommend looking up those different offerings, seeing how you can afford insurance from being an entrepreneur. Um, because if something happens within your business, then you will have insurance to back it up, and it won't be a lot of upfront out of pocket costs. So keep that in mind as well. Insurance for entrepreneurs aren't talked about. Insurances aren't talked about often, but it's now becoming more and more of a popular subject because the economy is unstable in a lot of ways, and just the realm of business in general. So insurance really helps with that particular factor. And now I would like to open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions from the presentation today.
Well, Justin, I think it was very thorough in what you said because it gives you a really good breakdown of the areas that you need to focus on. And I know that, our topic was what's not talked about on social media. So this is kind of giving a good explanation of all those areas that you need to consider before you actually just go head first into becoming an entrepreneur.
And Paula, I will say I can turn this into a PDF if you want your members or supporters to have a copy, because I know to be able to cater to all the different types of learners, some people may need it right in front of them. So I can make this available for your records as well.
Well, I think that if we could probably maybe just go over some of the areas that you feel are like priority in terms
Mhm,
of what people need to focus on first, so
mhm.
that because when you look at everything, it can be overwhelming. So, what are some of the areas people should focus on first?
Great question. First, I think market analysis. And I say that because I see a lot of people starting businesses, and with them starting these businesses, research isn't done. It may be popular on social media, but when you look at it, it's like, oh, well, that industry is rocky right now. And so it's important that you do the market analysis to know what's happening, know your customers, because some people will have a product or service that's really expensive. But then we look at their target audience, and it's like, well, your target audience doesn't make enough to actually afford your product or your service. So then there's some type of disconnect in that area. So I think research is something that I think people should do heavily and often to ensure that they're actually targeting the right audience and that they know about the industry that they're in. And then second would be, I would say, finances. So we know now it does not take a lot of money to start most businesses. However, it is important that you understand money yourself. As we stated, financial literacy isn't taught in most schools in the US. So you really do need to have a come sit down talk about finances, about money, so that you understand it on a personal level before you go to a business level. Because typically, if you don't have a great relationship with money personally, that will definitely bleed over into your finances for your business because you're still operating on the same mindset. And so knowing to actually also keep personal finances and business finances as separate as possible, different bank accounts. I would even suggest having your business bank account at a different bank than you have your personal. Keep everything very, very separate. And also, there are consultants that can also help as well in these areas. So you don't have to be alone. There are consultants that don't charge an arm and a leg. So you can actually hire someone that can walk you through these steps because, once again, we want to make sure that we're catering to every type of learner. Some people can look at this presentation and think, got it. Some people may say, oh no, I need someone to sit down with me and walk step by step by step. And there's nothing wrong with that. So know what type of entrepreneur and learner you are, and then get the right assistance that you need to be successful. So those two are the areas in which I think people should pay closer attention to.
Okay. I think the only other question that I have would be when someone is getting ready to decide that they want to become an entrepreneur, the structure of how you're going to set up your business is going to be very important. And from when I started with my own personal, I did a minimal activity license where it was like a license that I could get and I did not have to pay like all of the taxes in terms of through the Tennessee Department of Revenue because my income was going to be less than a certain amount. So, kind of walk us through how you think people should approach getting their business structure.
Great question because business structure is really important. And business structure was initially created for legal and tax purposes, wanting to make sure that you're not as liable for something that could potentially go wrong in the business, as well as how much money you pay in taxes every year. And so with this, thinking about the business that you've created, your research will let you know what your competition is doing. Are all the competition businesses that are going for the exact same customer base, are they limited liability companies? Well, then look at that structure, ask to know, and ask yourself, why are they all LLCs? What's the tax benefits? And so it's important that you do research in that regard, because if it's just you and you have a service that you're doing, then maybe a sole proprietorship may be the best for you. So once again, taxes, how much are you wanting to pay in taxes? How much, because each structure has a certain fee for operating. Can you afford that fee? Are you making enough to afford that fee? What are the benefits? Like for an example, with an LLC, which is a limited liability company, if I have an LLC and I'm sued, that means that they go after the business's money and not my personal finances. So that structure is set up to protect the actual person. So you want to do your research for the benefits of each legal structure for your business. Eric,
So I got.
yes.
So what do you at what point do you suggest? And I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but at what point do you suggest an entrepreneur outsource some of the duties, like with taxes and bookkeeping and legal matters? Because you know how when you're smaller and you're a
Mhm.
solopreneur, some of that stuff it's just a part of the day to day. But then it's at a certain point you want to outsource those tasks. When would you suggest that? What does that point look like?
Now, Eric, I will say with that, I think outsourcing is golden. I think that if you have options, I would say, of course, it's on a case by case basis. But what I'm seeing now is starting immediately if you can. And that's because it frees you up to actually do the work of the business. So, so what I've noticed now in entrepreneurship, especially with friends that are solopreneurs here in LA, they have virtual assistants that handle social media, and the sales that they garner from social media actually pays for the actual virtual assistant. And then as it relates to taxes and finances, in my opinion, even as a mathematician that knows numbers, I still outsource all of that to my accountant, because because if I'm spending time worried about that, then I'm not spending time on the actual business, which means that I'm not focused on getting clients and making more sales. So I say the sooner you can outsource, the better. So it frees up your time to get more customers, to market yourself more, and to just focus on sales, the sales of the business. So in my opinion, as soon as possible from what I'm seeing in the current realm of entrepreneurship. A really good question.
Well, one last question for me is, you mentioned that having someone to be a virtual assistant to help with social media. From your experience, how are you able to track the actual sales from social media presence? Because sometimes, you can have a campaign going, but you really don't see where the revenue is coming from. So, how are you able to track that?
So social media has gotten so smart. So now, like for an example, if you are selling in any of the meta brands, which is Facebook or Instagram, they now have you switch over to a business profile. And so when you sell on any of those platforms, or if you're marketing on any of those platforms, they give you all the data. They tell you how many clicks, they tell you how many people went to the website. And then you want to make sure that your website is also set up in a way that actually gives you data as well. I think it's an extra fee to be able to grab such data, but it is available to be able to track sales on social media. And it's becoming even more and more popular because social media wants you to do sales on social media. So now they're providing those statistics and all of that data to entrepreneurs. But you have to ensure that you switch over to a business profile and that you actually click the different offerings that they're offering for someone with a business profile. So it's way easier now versus counting one by one or asking people, where did you hear about us?
And what I'll say is that you actually covered every aspect of what you need to do to be an entrepreneur, and now it's the process of going through those different steps to get to each one of those areas, because you can't do it all at one time. You can't focus on everything all at one time. And I think a lot of times people look at, okay, this is everything that I have to do, but they don't have a plan as to, I'm going to do this for a certain length of time, then I'm going to focus on this, I'm going to focus on that, especially when you don't have like the resources to actually outsource all of those services. So you may have to figure out what is the best way for me to kind of eat this elephant one bite at a time, so to speak.
First of all, I was waiting for that analogy, Paula. So thank you. How do you eat an elephant? Cake, one bite at a time. So